Hey everyone, how's it going? Welcome to my free series on learning how to build a full stack, production ready SaaS application from start to finish. In this video, you will learn everything you need to know to get started designing websites and mobile applications using Figma. This is a beginner-friendly video, so I will explain everything step by step so that you can follow along and not only just learn how to design, but also understand the why behind everything. In the end, we will also build the simple landing page to give you an idea of how to apply the skills we have learned in this lesson. You will learn how to use basic tools in Figma, auto layouts, components, typography, color swatches, how to use plugins to speed up your workflow, and so much more. This video focuses on giving you the tools required to get you started rather than jumping right into building designs and websites, because I truly want you all to have a good foundation of the basics and understand the why behind everything before our next big video, where we will design a complete SaaS web application from start to finish. We will also learn how to convert our application into a full stack production ready build so that you can start SaaS businesses from the comfort of your own home. So don't forget to hit that subscribe button so that you can get notified when those videos come out. All right, grab a cup of coffee and let's get ready because this video is all you need to get started in Figma. Before we start, let's understand, why do we need this tool? What is the purpose? Well, Figma, first of all, is widely used by designers around the world, so that means we have a bigger community. But what is the main reason why we need Figma? Figma allows real-time collaboration with your team. So let's say you have a bunch of designers on your team, 10 designers in specific. All 10 designers can work on the project at once, and you can see real-time updates of what your team members are doing. Figma also makes it very easy to create design systems. Another good reason to use Figma is they have a pretty generous free package. Okay, so I just opened an account with Figma, so go ahead and start a free plan account, and you'll notice that they create a theme for you, right? So where you are right now is called a file browser. In the file browser, you can see your recent pages, your drafts, and your team, right? So go ahead and create a team. So right now it's called Parent Joseph's team. I'm going to change that to Web Prodigies. Once you're done creating a team, you can create a project. So let's go ahead and call this How to Use Figma, and let's create the project. So now we have our project here. So let's open our project and let's create a design file. So let's go ahead and open that, and it will take you to this page. I'm going to go ahead and hit no thanks here. So let's understand, what are we seeing on the page right now? So this is where you can do all your mockups, designing work, etc. Right? So on the left side, we have a sidebar. This sidebar basically shows you all of your components and all of your layers that are on the page. It's kind of like Photoshop, right? In Photoshop, you can see each layer. So for example, if you created a frame, don't get confused. I mean, don't worry about this. We'll learn everything in a second, but you see it says we have a frame on the page, and you can now click on this frame and it will kind of highlight the frame for you. So this is where you can see all your layers in Figma. What about this? It shows you all the tools that you can use, such as creating text. Guys, it's like Paint, right? It's the same thing. It's just much better. I promise you, it is super simple. So before we get started, I want you all to believe that this is really easy and it is possible, right? So let's understand this. What is this? These are just a bunch of shapes. If you've used Canva, it's pretty similar, right? You can create a bunch of shapes. This is a frame. We will get to all that in a second, but just showing you that this is where you can get access to all the tools in Figma. So this right here is the plugins. The plugin section is what you'll be using a lot, okay? And the plugin section allows you to search up plugins created by the community, and you can reuse them in your Figma projects. So what about this side? So this right side is basically like a settings tab, right? It has a properties, some design settings. So let's say if we had a frame, for example, you can change the color. It's like Photoshop. You see this? You can change let's see, you can change its opacity, right? You can do a bunch of stuff here. So this is sort of like the settings sidebar, right? So the left side shows you the layers, the top gives you access to all the tools, and the right side just gives you the settings for your elements or your layers. So let's understand how to create stuff in Figma. So the first thing you want to do is create a frame. What is a frame and why do we need a frame? So think about it this way, right? When you need to create a section to group all your elements, you'd probably want to put it in a little box, right? Think about a frame like that. Okay, there's also something called a section, but let's not get confused with that for now. A frame is what we need to sort of create a starting point within which we will create all our layouts. So let's create a frame, and we want this frame to be the starting point for our website. So the shortcut is to hit F. F for frame, easy, right? And instead of drawing our frame, right, that would be very hard to predict all screen sizes, Figma makes it super easy for you. So when you hit F here, it will give you a bunch of options such as tablet, phone, desktop, etc. So let's go ahead and just create a desktop. And now whatever you put in there, like a rectangle or a circle, everything, it's all within that frame. Let's understand how to use these shapes. Why would we need to use these shapes? Well, we might need to use shapes like rectangles to create maybe our nav bar up top, or maybe an image for our hero page, some headers like this, and some body text with our CTA, right? And maybe we can give a border radius. You see, well, this is awful, but you see how this comes in handy. And shapes are, of course, used for other things too, not just mockups, such as building logos or even much more complex illustrations. So to create a rectangle, you can hit R for rectangle, and you can draw a rectangle right here inside the frame. You can also hit Shift to lock in the ratio. What about a circle? You can hit O to create a circle. Another thing you're going to need is a line, and the shortcut is L for line. You can click and drag to create a line, and you can also hit a Shift again to kind of lock it onto the axis. If you hold Shift and L, it will draw a line with an arrow at the end. And of course, you can also do Command Z to undo, right? Like every application, you can undo stuff and redo stuff by hitting Shift Command Z to redo and Command Z to undo. So to create text, you can hit T, click anywhere you want the text to be, and you can just write something. So let's just say how to use Figma. And now you can also zoom in. So if you have a trackpad, you can, I'm using a trackpad right now, so you can just zoom in like how you'd zoom in on an iPhone screen to see an image. And you can also move your text to anywhere in the page, right? So let's say we want to move it up top here, you can move it there. So what if you want to change the properties of anything, whether it's a rectangle or a circle or the frame itself or the text itself? Well, if you want to change the settings of anything, you want to go to the right side. Always remember that. If you want to find something, you're going to go to the left sidebar. If you want to edit the settings of something, you want to go to the right sidebar. So right now we want to change the font to DM Sans. So we're going to click on the text that we want to, and you can also do it by clicking this, right? Of course, so you can click this text here and go here where it has the font option, and you can change that to DM Sans, for example. And there you go, the font has changed. You can also change it to medium or bold. You can change the font size, right? And another cool thing is if you hold down Option, you can drag this number to increase it too. So let's say, sometimes if you go to the largest number, 128 here, you want to go larger than that, you can hit Option and go higher than that, right? This is a pretty useful shortcut. So what is this? This is line height. So let's say if we created how to use Figma by Web Prodigies, right? So you see the distance between the first line and the second line. You see there's a little bit of a distance, right? That is called line height. If you select all your font, you can control the line height between them right here. So right now we are reducing it and increasing it. This is the spacing between the letters. If you increase it, it just changes the spacing between them. So let's say you increase this box here. You can tell Figma to start all the text from the middle, right? Or from the top, or from the bottom. And if you want more finer tweaking adjustments, you can hit this more option or typesetting, and it will show up a bunch of things that you could use, such as list styles or you can create a case system like lowercase, for example. You can also do underlining, so much more. So what about these options? So right here, we're telling Figma that you want this text box to automatically adjust the width. So if I enter words here, like whatever, it will automatically adjust the width for this text box. But let's say you wanted the width to be fixed and the height to be automatic. Well, that would be the next option. So this option right here would say auto height, which means the width would be fixed, but if you enter anything after that, it will go to the next line. This option is fixed size, where if you click this, it will not grow in width or in height. So let's understand the pen tool. The pen tool allows you to create vectors. So you see right here, it creates a vertex or point, and you can use that point to kind of create a design. You can also click and drag to create a curve in your design. So here's a quick test for you, right? We want to change the settings of this vector design. If you want to change the settings of anything in Figma, where should you look? If you said the right sidebar, good job. So all these options on the right sidebar allow you to control the settings of this vector drawing. Probably change the width of the stroke, right, to 22, to 15, to whatever you want. And you can also change the color. So you can click on this black box and change the color to anything you want. What about fill? Well, the word itself kind of tells you, right? Fill, to fill this vector with anything. So you can fill things in Figma with a color, or you can fill it with a gradient. And you can see the transparency from this option right here. You also have images at the bottom. So now you can click here, you can upload any image that you have. All right, let's look at section. So section is actually a little more complex than what people think. People think a section is something like, creating a section and you can group all your elements. Of course, you can do that. But I came to know that sections are actually used for prototyping. But for now, you can wrap all your designs in a section to kind of have a systematic drop down, right, for all your elements and all your layers in your Figma file. Another tool that I wanted to touch on is the create component. So the word itself says it, right? If you create an element, let's say you create a rectangle, you can create a component out of it. Simple, right? So this can be very handy because if you create components out of your elements or your layers, you can reuse your components across your entire project. And when you change styling on the master component, that will affect every element in your Figma project. That saves you a lot of time. All right, now let's jump into some more fun stuff, okay? Let's say we want to create global styling. We want to create a color swatch that we can use in our entire Figma project. The one way to do this is to create a style out of it. Click this style button right here, and this will show you a bunch of color styles in your project through which you can also browse for other color styles. But right now we're going to create a template color of this so you can use it for other elements. So you can hit the plus icon to create a style out of it, give it a name, and maybe you can call it primary red, and maybe you can give it a description. You don't really need to do that, but you can give it a name and hit create style. And we want to reuse this red color, primary color, for this circle. By default, Figma will give you a fill right here. You can see it, right? This subtract icon or minus icon allows you to delete the fill for that. So let's give it a fill. So we can hit this style layout and you can look for the color primary red, and now you can select that, and now the styling is used for all elements. Now let's say in the future you want to edit this primary red, right? Your partner's told you, hey, I don't like this red, I want it to be a little darker. You can click on your styling right here and hit the edit style right here. And now you can change this and it will change it for all your elements in your file. Of course, you can create template styles for other properties too, like stroke or effects, right? This way you can reuse a box shadow, for example. Another thing I want to touch on is how layers work in Figma. So let's say we have a rectangle, right? You can see a rectangle right here, and we have two rectangles. Let's give this a color. of color red and give this a color of color blue. So even though we created both rectangles on the same plane, you will notice that the red rectangle, which is at the bottom, is behind the blue rectangle. Elements that appear up top appear on the top layer, and elements that are at the bottom appear at the bottom layer. So here's a quick question for you. If I want to create a circle that lays in between these two layers, how would I do that? Well, I hope you got the right answer, but if you said first create a circle and then move the layers accordingly, that's the correct answer. Right now, we can move our elements along the layers panel. So we're going to move our circle in between the rectangles, and there you go. That's how that works. You can also move elements outside of a flow. So you can move it outside of your desktop. So now the circle is basically placed behind your desktop. Elements that are on top are basically on top of your file, right? They're on top of everything. And elements at the bottom are all the way behind. So that's why this circle is behind this section, because the section is all the way up top. Now let's understand a few more properties. So we have a rectangle here. A very common thing that you would do in designing is creating a curve around these rectangles. Zoom in if you don't see this dot. Sometimes that happens, right? Like see, for example, I don't see the dot right now. So if I zoom in, a little dot will appear here, and that allows you to control the radius. This is how you can create a curve for the borders. Another way to do this is to click on your element and head over to the properties tab, right? Remember, if you want to change the settings for any elements, look at the right side tab. And there's this little thing you see here, right? It says corner radius. So if you hover over things, it's going to tell you what it is. So this is corner radius. So let's go ahead and give this 21 pixel corner radius, and that's how it works. Now, what if you want to only give it a top right radius? So this allows you to control independent corners. So you can click this, and now you can control each individual border radius. So what about drop shadows? Well, we use that a lot too. So how do we do that? Again, when you want to control the settings for an element, you head over to the right tab, right? So everything is supposed to be here, nowhere else, right? So if you head down, you will see stroke, and then you will see effects. If you click on effects, it will add a drop shadow by default. There are multiple options such as inner shadow, drop shadow, layer blur, and background blur. For drop shadow, if you want to fine tweak everything, you can click on this effect setting, looks like a sun icon, and you can change the blur, or you can also move the drop shadow around using the X and Y axis. You can also change the color of the drop shadow. Now, what is layer blur? Layer blur basically places a blur effect on the entire layer itself. That's why this rectangle right now looks really blurry. So of course you can increase the blur to create this little I don't know, gradient effect or whatever you want to call it. And what about background blur? Now this is a little different. So let's understand how this works. Let's reduce the opacity. So what background blur does is it puts a blur layer inside this element. It doesn't put it on the entire layer, but it just puts it inside this. It's the background. So now when you change this, it kind of creates this really cool glass morphic design look. This is how you can create that really cool glass, frosted glass like effect. So what are auto layouts? Auto layouts allow you to control the alignment and positioning of direct child elements within a frame. So if you had a bunch of cards on the screen that are within a frame, you can give it a layout flow. A good use case of this would be, let's say if you had a bunch of cards that on a desktop view was supposed to be horizontally stacked, and on a mobile view has to be vertically stacked. All you have to do is just switch it to a vertically stacked layout system, and that's it. It's already set up for a mobile device now. Another reason why we use auto layouts is to create fluid designs, or we like to say responsive designs. For example, with auto layouts, we can set elements to be aligned in a certain way in the frame so that when the frame grows and shrinks, the elements also respond accordingly. Okay, so let's see how to build auto layouts in Figma. So let's try to build a very simple product landing page, right? So we have a bunch of products here, right? 1, 2, 3, right? We just made them random size for now. I'll show you why. But you see these can represent the product image, for example. And let's use a plugin here. So we're going to use Unsplash, which makes adding images to the background of a element super easy. So we'll just look for product, for example. Let's put this in here. To convert something into an auto layout, you want to select all the elements and hit Shift A. And that will create an auto layout. You can see it wraps all your direct children inside a frame. Or right click and add auto layout. Another powerful feature of auto layouts is the ability to adjust the spacing, right? The margin between your child elements globally. So you could use this arrow to kind of increase the distance, or you could also click on your auto layout itself and then head to this part right here which says horizontal space between items, and you can adjust the space between them, right? The other options you get through auto layouts are alignment. So let's try center for now. So what does center do? Let's see. If we increase the size of this container, what we're basically saying is all the children items inside this auto layout should be centered inside this frame. So that's why everything is right in the center. And it has this space in between them too. If you put left top corner, they will all go to the left top corner. Whereas if it was aligned left center, then you see if you increase the height, it will also align the children items vertically and make sure that they are on the left side of your frame. Remember, I also told you you can change the layout flow of your children elements. Let's take a look at that. So right here, you see it says vertical layout and horizontal layout. If you click on these, you can easily toggle between two different layout flows, right? This is super easy. And this way we can convert, for example, a bunch of cards that we are using on a desktop view right here. We can now convert that into a iPhone view, right? By just copying it, pasting it here, and changing the auto layouts. Makes it really easy to work with responsive design. Another very important feature is the advanced auto layout settings. If you click on this, you can now set the spacing and the spacing modes for your direct children elements. So right now it is in spacing packed, and let's change that to space between. So don't worry about this, we'll get more into this in a bit, but I just want to show you the power of auto layouts. So what about your child elements? Right now, all our child elements have a fixed height and a fixed width. How can I tell that? Well, from here, if you click on your child element, it will tell you if it is a fixed width or a fixed height. So what we want to do is we want to change the height to fill container for all of them. Now you'll notice that our child elements take up the space available vertically. So if you increase the container size, well, if you guessed right, the child elements are also going to respond accordingly. So there you go. And of course, you can also set the width to fill the container too. And now if you increase the height and the width, the elements will accordingly scale. So really helps in building responsive layouts. What does space between mean? Space between means take the first child element and place it towards the starting of your auto layout, and it will take the last element and place it on the ending of your auto layout. So our start and ending here, because this is a horizontal layout, is the starting is the left side and the ending is the right side. And all other children will be spaced between the first child and the last child, and they'll be spaced equally. So if we duplicated something in here, you will see there's equal space between all of these. So let's look at a real world example where we would use this space between. If you were to build this header in Figma, you would want to create 3 children, right? The left side, the middle, and the right side. Exactly what we have right here. Say if this is the logo and your links might be this long, so I'm just gonna create a box to simulate that. And for our final element, we can create the call to action right here, right? And now you can select all of these and hit Shift A, which will create an auto layout for us. And now you can move it to the top of the page. But remember, you need to select your auto layout flow or else it's not going to work, right? If you extend the screen, it's not going to be responsive. So you want this header to extend to the right side and the left side. You also want it to have the space between to create this effect. Click on your auto layout, go to advanced auto layout settings and change the spacing mode to space between. Now you pretty much built Tesla's header in Figma. Now let's understand constraints. What are constraints? So the word, again, every word should probably give you a hint, right? And I want you guys to make a guess because this is a very important skill. As a developer or a designer, you have to have the ability to guess. If you can guess, if someone asks you a question in an interview, or if they put you on the spot during a meeting, for example, and they ask you, "Hey, parent, tell me, what is this?" Let me tell you a little secret. Nobody knows what it is, right? You have to have the ability to guess. So this is how I train every single student of mine. I make them guess on the spot to teach you and prep you for enterprise level training. I want you to guess what constraints are doing. By reading this word, constraints sounds like some sort of setting that sets a boundary of some sort or some kind of restriction, right? That's exactly what constraints are doing. It allows you to create these restrictions for your element so that it can respond to the constraints accordingly. So right now, an element will have constraints set to its nearest parent. So since this has a left side constraint, it means the left side will respond to the left side of its parent element, which is this desktop frame. So if I shrink this frame right now, you will see that it's going to move with respect to that constraint. So what about the right side? So the way to create a right constraint is to hit Command and then click your constraint. So then it creates another constraint for you. So you can adjust your constraints further by hitting the drop down here. This is going to create a constraint for your element to the right side of its parent element and left side of the parent element, and also the top of your parent element. So if I shrink this desktop, it's going to move with it. And if I shrink it from the left, it's going to shrink with respect to both left and right. So this is the power of constraints. Okay, let's do a quick little checkpoint assignment. The element we're going to be building is this bottom nav bar right here. Don't worry about this icon if you don't know how to do it right now. Just figure out how to get elements on the left side and on the right side. So go ahead and pause this video, give it a shot, take a challenge. No problem if you can't do it. If you can't, come right back to this video. In a couple seconds, I will show you exactly how to do it. So the first thing we realize is these are all a bunch of links, right? So let's first create a link element that we can sort of reuse in here. Usually we would create a component, but for now, since we didn't get into components yet, let's just create an element and duplicate it. So we're just going to use one word for now. So let's use home, set this to around 16 pixel, which is sort of the default that we use for font on desktop devices. And let's also give this a regular. Let's copy paste this right next to each other. And now we can select these and give it an auto layout. So what is the auto layout shortcut? It's Shift A. We can duplicate all these elements inside this. And we did this by simply doing Command D, and auto layout will automatically place the elements next to each other. What about the other link on the right side? Let's go ahead and create another one here for our right side, and let's delete some that we don't need. You can also use this side to delete them. So we have two elements right there and a bunch of elements on our left side. Now to create this auto layout to have these elements show up on the left and this on the right, I hope you did this right, but if not, no worries. You want to select them both and hit Shift A to create an auto layout for them. So now you have an auto layout frame right here that has two frames, the left side frame and the right side frame. So these are the direct children to this parent. The next thing we want to do is we want to align this to the left side of our desktop and align this to the right side. And now we want this to go to the right side of our screen and this on the left side. So the way to do that is to use space between. The other thing we realize is it looks like it has a little bit of padding. You can create some horizontal padding. So you can create some space right here and maybe some padding at the top and bottom. Is this responsive? No. Why is it not responsive? Can you make a guess? We have not set any constraints on our elements. So let's go ahead and set a constraint for this element, which is left and right. And now if you shrink the parent, you will see these elements are responsive. Let's move on to the next part, which is how to build components. All right, so in our last test, we had to duplicate each of these links to create, multiple links. But there's a problem there. What if these links were much more complex? Like, what if they had a line below them if they were selected? Or it can be as complex as you need it to. So as you can see, maybe copy pasting these elements can be a little tedious, especially if you need to change the styling for one of them. You would have to change it for all. Let's say you wanted to remove this. Now you have to do it for all of that. That's a little tedious. So we're going to create the link component for that navbar. So let's hit T to create the text. We put the text in here, and we're just going to call this home for now. And now all you have to do to convert this into a component is scroll to the top and hit create component. Or you can right click and also hit create component like this. And now you'll see this little purple outline around it. And Figma is also telling you, hey, you can pick your assets from the Assets tab. So if you were wondering, why didn't we look at this Asset tab? It's because we were just waiting for the right moment. So the first thing you want to do after you create a component is give it a better name. So let's just call this link component. And in your assets, it will also be called link component. Let's change our component to also say link. All right, so once you renamed your component, you might see that sometimes the component does not resize to fit it, right? Because you see the text is smaller and your link is a different size, it's still the same. Well, you can head over right here, and this is a resize to fit shortcut that you can click, and your component will then resize to fit the elements inside. So Figma allows us to create component states or different variants for these components too. And this is where components become really powerful, because let's say this link is supposed to be lighter when it is not active. Then we would need to have a different component variant for this, right? It's very easy to do that. All you have to do is click on your component, go up here and hit variant. And we're going to change this to state, right? Because for our link component, it's going to have two states for now. One is an active state and a default state. So this is the active state. So let's change that to active. And the second one is going to have default. And let's also change the color for this element. The way to get to the text is to double click. Another shortcut is to hold Command on Mac and click on the link directly. That will click the text for you, or the innermost components or elements for you. So since this is a default link, we want it to be a little lighter. You can also create other properties for your components. For example, you can create Boolean values or instance swaps. So as you can see right here, some of the links have this icon. So we want to have the flexibility of turning that icon on and off for each of our component variants. So first we would have to create our text, and we'd call this link, for example, give it 16 pixels. And now we need to create an icon. So we'll go in here. And this is a plugin called Icons 8. You can just run this plugin. We'll paste our bookmark icon. And sometimes you'll notice that it just pastes the elements outside your frame. You can just drag it in there. And let's resize this. So this is a PNG image. You never want to use PNG for icons. You always want to use SVGs, but that is a paid tool, unfortunately. But that's fine. There are plenty of free community icons available in Figma, right, that you can access for free. So since this is just for learning purpose, we're just going to use this PNG right here. So first thing we need to do is we want to create an auto layout for this so that we can control the alignment of these links. So Shift A will create our auto layout. Let's also shrink this image a little bit. It's a little too big, don't you think? That looks better. Let's create a component out of this, and let's also create a variant out of this. So now we have two variants. We have our default variant and our active variant. So let's set those properties on that and change this to state. And let's just change that to active. And for this one, we'll change it to default. So this is the problem with PNGs, right? You can't change the color. This is why you need to use SVGs, but I'm just gonna change the opacity. Now to create an option to show or hide this, right? All you wanna do is create another property, hit Boolean, and let's call that icon. And we'll set we'll set that to false. All right, so now that we created our Boolean property, we want to have the ability to turn it off and on whenever we want it, right? So how do we do that? So you want to click on the elements that you want to apply this Boolean property to, and you'll see here on the layer through this pass-through, if this was off, the element will not show, right? So this little icon here allows you to apply a Boolean property to that pass-through layer, right? So if you click on that and you hit icon, now this little tag, it creates this tag for you that shows that these icons are now attached to this pass-through, right? So if you create an instance of this component, you can do that by going into your asset and dragging in your component in here. Now you have access to the default state or the active state and also the icon or no icon. And with the help of components, you can change this at any time. You could turn this icon on or you could change it to active, whatever you want. You would want this whole nav bar to show up on all these pages. So building a component out of that would make more sense. So let's go ahead and do that. What if we wanted to create a variant for this for mobile view? Let's click this add a variant. For mobile view, we probably don't want this right side. So we're going to create a quick little hamburger menu, which looks like this. Let's select this, use auto layout 2 again, and Command D. So as you can see, we have 3 elements in here, right? And sometimes all these elements could have different colors, and it could be quite annoying to get into the element to select and then change the color for them. Well, section colors tells us that in this section, these are the colors that are available to change. So let's say, for example, if this was red color and we wanted to change the red color, we could just select the whole element, and then in the section color, you can change each of them. This makes it easy to target some specific styling or colors, etc. So right now, we're going to change this to black. So this looks a little too tiny for a hamburger menu. So this is a good time to also bring up the scale tool. So the scale tool allows you to scale an element or a component, but also keep the ratio. So to scale anything, just use the scale tool, and the shortcut is K. And now we can simply drag this into our auto layout and it will paste it in there for us. And since we don't want this right side, we can go ahead and delete that. So now we have 2 variants for our navigation. Another important concept in Figma are grids. So let's look at what a grid system can help us do. The grids allow us to create some guidelines that we can follow to make sure that our elements are perfectly aligned, right? So let's see how to do that. So to create a grid system for your frame, you want to click on your frame, head over to your properties tab and click the plus icon for your layout grid, and that will create a grid for us. But we want columns. Head to grid here and create columns. And for desktop, the standard is 12 counts, right? So 12 columns. And we like to set the margin. Again, you can use that option shortcut. And usually it's around 45 pixels. Well, it's not set in stone, but you can put whatever you want. And for iPad, you can set it to 8, which is the standard again. And we'll give it a margin of about 35 pixels. And finally, for mobile, you want to set a grid column with a count of 4. And again, you can give this a slight bit of a margin, maybe 25. Now, whatever elements you build, you can use this grid system to create pixel perfect elements, right? So if you create a rectangle, let's say on our mobile device, we have a product. So it will snap to the edge of this grid for you. So that way you can make sure that all elements are perfectly aligned. You can also turn off your grid by hitting Shift G, and you can turn it on by hitting Shift G again. So now it's time to design, and we're going to be designing this new product from Apple called Vision Pro. First thing we're going to build is this header. And the other thing you notice is a logo here and 2 icons, a search icon and this cart icon. Okay, so I'm just going to show you how to build one of these icons, and then we're just going to use the plugin. So first, we're going to use a frame and build a 24 by 24 frame to kind of encapsulate all of our icon content. And let's also give it a background color so we can differentiate from our assets and the background. And first thing we need is another rectangle to create this the bag itself, right? And let's reduce its height a little bit, and let's give it a stroke. And let's give this stroke probably, I think 1.5 is okay, right? That looks okay. And it also has to be a little shorter. So we'll do this to it. Now to create that arc, let's use a circle, and we can do that like this. And if you hit Option H, it will center the circle in the frame. So that's another quick little tip there. And you see this arc here. If you drag this, it will split the circle in half, and you can kind of move this around and create whatever shapes you like. So we want this, and this one allows you to decrease the ratio from inside. So this looks fine to me. And I'm also going to give this a background of black for now, and then we'll figure out the other stuff later. And let's give this a border radius. So a border radius of maybe 3. That looks fine. This looks more longer, right? So let's try to do that too. Why not? So let's decrease the width here and decrease the width here too. Hit Option H to center that. Let's move this higher up, and we can increase the height of the square. So now it looks more like this icon right here. The icon's also white, so let's go ahead and do that. So here's the other thing that we learned. You can use the selection color, and you can change all colors at once. So we want to change the black colors to white. So now you see how we can use that tool, and it makes it really easy, right? And I also realized this rectangle has a fill, so let's remove that fill too. So now we create our first icon. So you can go ahead and also create this icon and the Apple logo, but I'm just going to use the icon library to sort of speed up our process now. All right, so I went ahead and created 3 more icons here, and I just want to show you something really cool. And it's called instance swaps. Instance swaps is a component feature, a property that allows you to instantly swap a component with another component or another variant, right? So that can be very useful in icons. For example, let's say we wanted to change this icon to a cart icon. What you would have to do if you didn't use instance swaps is you would have to copy this component and then delete this one and paste it in there, right? It's a lot of work. Whereas imagine if you could just hit a drop down and change it. So I'll show you how to do that. And this is how we build global icon sets for big projects, right? So the first thing you want to do is you want to select the components, you want to select your icons that you created, and you want to hit on this drop down and hit create multiple components. So each one of these are going to be components of their own. Okay, that's the first thing you want to do. Now the next thing you want to do is you want to create a frame outside here and convert it to a auto layout. So do Shift A. And now you want to create an instance of this. So hit Option and drag it into this auto layout. And now you will see that auto layout that we created now has the new instance card component inside it, right? So let's just reset. It has some unnecessary padding, so let's just remove that. Remove the top padding too. Now we have this component. So this is a frame that has a component inside it. Now click the frame and now create another component out of that frame. Now what you're going to do is you're going to click on this cart icon component that's inside here. Click on it, and this instance swap property will show up. Okay, this basically allows you to convert a component into a different variant. So what you're going to do is you're going to click this instance swap, and it's going to bring this up, and you're going to hit this plus icon, and now you can select all the different type of variants you want for it, and just hit create property. Now when you create an instance of this, right? Let's say you created an instance of this, but you don't want this, you can just change it to another component. So the first thing we need to do is change the background. The background looks black color right here. So let's go ahead and change that to black. Perfect. And now what's the next thing? So For our header, we also need link elements. We hit T, we click, and then we say link. Let's bring this down, change this to DM Sans. I like DM Sans for now, so we'll just keep it at that. And let's change the font size to 16. We want to create a component out of it, right? So go ahead and hit this right here, create component, and to create a variant and call this default. And for this, we're active. Our default color, text color, from white to slightly a little gray, right? A little grayed out. And you can also search your icon itself, okay? If you gave it a name, you can search your icon. So let's drag the Apple logo in here. Next thing we need is a link. So let's get our link, paste the link in here. So first you want to select these two and then hit Shift A, which will create an auto layout. So it's easier for you to just duplicate these, and the auto layout will put it side by side. We need our search component. Let's pull that in here. And we need our cart icon. Let's pull that in here too. So now here's a good part of creating components, right? So you can shrink them down if you need to. So you can hit K and just shrink them down a little, and now they will shrink everywhere in your application. So since we are on the vision page, I'm going to click on this link and convert it into active. All right, and now we're just going to go ahead and reduce this margin, and we can hit Option H, remember, to center our elements. We need to stretch them from left side to right side to kind of create that nav bar. Right? Everything's in the center. If we put it on the left side, you see it will go to the left, but we want it to be right in the center. So we're going to do that. And let's also go ahead and see our grid layout. So that way we can align this perfectly with our grid layout, right? So everything is responsive. And now we want our nav bar to also have some padding inside, and that way we can move this to the top of our page. Let's also give this a left and right, so that way when we shrink, our nav bar also shrinks. The next thing is we need a Vision Pro and a button here. So the quickest way to create a button is to first create some text. So notify me, and now hit Shift A to convert that into an auto layout. And that kind of creates some padding for us. It kind of makes it look like a button, right? And this is actually part of Figma. Figma is clever enough to know that this is supposed to be a button. So if you want to build buttons really quick, you can do it this way. We're going to create some border radius for this. So let's give it like 32 pixel. And let's also give it a background color. So put a fill here, and we can give that white. And the text itself, let's give it black. And we can also decrease the padding from top to bottom a little bit. Now going back to our page, we can click on the assets and drag our button in here. And we can put that right there. And we also need this Vision Pro. So usually what you would do is you would have typography settings. If you recollect, we did set global styling through this for style icon right here, and this allows us to create some typography. So what you would do is you would usually have a typography page very similar to the one you see on the screen right now that has all your global styling. But just to make things easy for now, let's go ahead and create some text and call it Vision Pro. And let's give it a font size of 26 pixels, and let's make this medium. Now you want to select both the button and this, and again create an auto layout. So Shift A, right? And now you want to center your elements to the left side. Now you may ask, wait, you centered it to the left side, but why are these elements to the left and right? Because you created the auto layout with the elements so far apart. Figma went ahead and created a padding between them of 772 pixels. So let's delete that. So finally, we need to put this image. All right, perfect. So for the image, let's go ahead and drag the image in here. I just took a screenshot of the image from their page. Okay, so now what you want to do is you want to click on your image and you want to change it from fill to fit. And the other thing is you want to change its constraints too. So let's set this to left and right, and this can be from the top. Now when you shrink your page, you will notice that the image also shrinks. Now to create the other headings, which is introduction, and after that, let's put this Vision Pro right here, and let's increase the size of these. And once that's done, we want to select this and hit Shift A to create an auto layout. Now the same thing goes for all the other devices. So when we shrink the browser, you'll notice that only the icons stay and all the navigation, everything just disappears. The second header also sticks to the left and right side, as well as the header too. What I'd like to do is I'd like to copy this, paste it in our component frame, and let's create a component out of it, and let's change the name to navigation. And let's also create a variant for it. Now in our second variant, we need to remove all the links. So let's select all these components and simply just delete them. The other thing you're going to notice is the Apple logo is towards the left, whereas these icons are on the right. And there's a hamburger menu that we need to create. So let's create that hamburger menu real quick. Select these, change the color to white. So I'm just going to group this for now. You can create a component out of it if you like to. And I'm just going to paste it into this. So now we have all the components, but they are not aligned correctly. So another cool thing with auto layouts is when you create groups between items, it sort of, creates a set, right? Like it becomes one direct child. And so we can either convert this into a group, or you can create this into another auto layout. So let's just do Shift A to create an auto layout out of this. And now we can control the spacing between these elements. So here's a quick question for you. If I want to set this to have this child on the left and this child on the right, how do I do that? Good. If you said click here and change this to space between, you got it perfectly correct. Let's also change the names. These are very important. So we'll call this variant, and we'll change this to desktop web. And for this, we'll change it to MWeb. And now in all our devices, we can bring in our navigation component, or we can change it to mobile web, and we can adjust this to be side to side. You can do the same for your Vision Pro component too. So copy the other two things. So let's paste that in here. Align this by doing Option H to be aligned center. We can follow this system here. For the mobile view, it's pretty much the same thing. Let's copy this and paste it in here. We want to do Option H, and we can bring this introduction here, hit Option H to center it, Option H for the Vision Pro. Looks a little too big, so let's hit K and kind of scale that down a little bit. And now you can move it up and also hit Option H to center that. In the next video, we will build a full design system using components, icons, color palettes, responsive designs for both desktop and mobile devices. We will also look at prototyping and how you can create beautiful mockups to show to your clients. I really enjoy making these videos for you, so if you like this video and want to see more like this, don't forget to subscribe and hit the notification bell so that you can get notified when those awesome videos come out. Thanks for watching, and see you next time.